Jason Miller thought moving into a quiet Texas suburb would mean peace until his packages began mysteriously vanishing from his own porch. At the center of it all stood Karen Thompson, the smug HOA president, who hid behind rules while helping herself to what wasn't hers. But Jason wasn't about to lose. He set a clever trap that turned her arrogance into her undoing. Just wait until you hear how this unbelievable twist exposed her once and for all, and why justice finally shone brighter than ever. My name is Jason Miller, and not too long ago, I thought I had finally found the kind of neighborhood people dream about. You know the picture. A quiet suburb in Texas, wide streets lined with identical houses, perfectly trimmed lawns, kids riding bikes without a care in the world. When I first drove in with the moving truck, I remember thinking, this is it. This is where life slows down, where I can finally breathe. The first few weeks were exactly what I expected. The grass always smelled freshly cut, people waved from their porches, and there was this general sense of calm. My wife and I would sit outside in the evenings, watching the sun dip behind the rooftops, feeling like we had made the right decision. But underneath that postcard-perfect surface, there was a shadow. A shadow with a name. Karen Thompson. Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She was the head of our HOA, the person supposedly in charge of maintaining the neighborhood standards. And at first, I didn't even think much of her. She came over the day we moved in, smiled a little too wide, and welcomed us with a stack of pamphlets about the community rules. I figured she was just a little intense, the kind of person who likes things a certain way. I could live with that. But within days, the little cracks started showing. The first complaint came in the form of a bright yellow slip taped to my door. Bushes not trimmed to standard height. That's what it said. I actually laughed when I read it because who even measures the height of someone else's bushes? Still, I pulled out the clippers and trimmed them down because I didn't want to start trouble right after moving in. Then came the mailbox note. Apparently, the color I had chosen, a deep navy blue, was too bold for the neighborhood's aesthetic. Karen stopped me in the driveway one morning, waving her clipboard like a badge of authority, and told me I had 2 weeks to repaint it in an approved shade. She said it with such confidence, like she owned not just her house, but mine too. At this point, I was irritated, but I tried to stay calm. Maybe this was just how things worked here. Maybe Karen was strict with everyone, and I just had to adjust. But then the packages started disappearing. The first time I thought it was a mistake. I had ordered a pair of noise-canceling headphones, something I'd been saving up for, and the tracking app said they had been delivered. But when I checked the porch, there was nothing. I called the delivery service, and they confirmed it had been dropped off right at my door. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe it had been misplaced, or maybe someone grabbed it by accident. Then it happened again. A week later, a small box with a rare figurine I had ordered for my collection vanished the same way. Delivered, but gone. I started to get this sinking feeling in my stomach. The final straw came when I ordered medication I needed. It wasn't optional. It wasn't a luxury item. It was important. And just like before, the tracking said delivered, but the porch was empty. I stood there staring at the bare concrete step, my chest tight, and I could feel the heat rising in my face. That was the moment my anger truly hit. This wasn't just about stuff anymore. This wasn't about some headphones or a figurine. This was about someone taking things that didn't belong to them, right out in the open, as if they were untouchable. And the worst part? Everyone in the neighborhood knew Karen had a reputation for looking after packages. Some people even whispered that she liked to hold on to them for a while, claiming it was for security reasons. But let's be real, that wasn't security. That was theft, dressed up in community rules and fake authority. Every time I saw her walking her little dog, chin up, giving me that smug smile, I felt the frustration boil deeper. It wasn't just losing items. It was the humiliation of knowing she thought she could get away with it, that she thought I was powerless to stop her. For days, I replayed it in my head. The vanished boxes, the empty porch, the mocking look in her eyes whenever I brought up a missing delivery. It was like living in a picture-perfect neighborhood with a hidden villain pulling the strings. And that's when something shifted inside me. I wasn't just annoyed anymore. I was done being the newcomer who quietly followed the rules. I was angry, and I was ready to do something about it. After the third package disappeared, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I decided to confront Karen face to face. I remember walking up to her porch, rehearsing the words in my head. I didn't want to sound aggressive, but I also didn't want to sound weak. When she opened the door, she gave me that same practiced smile, the one that never touched her eyes. I told her calmly that my deliveries had been going missing and asked if she had seen anything unusual in the neighborhood. Her response? She tilted her head slightly, almost as if she was amused, and said, "Oh, maybe the delivery messed up the address." It happens. Then she gave a little shrug, like the whole problem was too small to even matter. That shrug cut deeper than any words. It wasn't denial, not really. It wasn't even concern. It was dismissal. It was her way of telling me she wasn't worried, because in her mind, she had nothing to worry about. The worst part was what happened afterward. A couple of neighbors, people I had started chatting with during evening walks, quietly hinted that Karen had a system. They said it in lowered voices, glancing around to make sure no one overheard. According to them, she believed it was her duty to keep an eye on everyone's packages. If something looked suspicious, or if she thought it didn't belong, she would scoop it up, claiming she was protecting the community. At first, I wanted to believe maybe they were exaggerating. Maybe she was just overzealous, a little too protective. But then I noticed something strange. Half the things that went missing, they somehow found their way into her house. A box half opened sitting by her garage, a neighbor's package leaning against her wall. I even saw, with my own eyes, a delivery truck leave something on my porch, only for Karen to walk past it minutes later. And by the time I got outside, it was gone. That's when it hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't some misunderstanding. This wasn't her protecting the neighborhood. This was deliberate. And what could I do? Call the police? I tried. But without hard evidence, they treated it like a minor issue, barely worth noting. File a report, keep track of what's missing, they said. But that didn't stop the packages from vanishing. It didn't stop the gnawing frustration in my chest every time I checked the porch, hoping today would be different, only to find nothing. I felt powerless, and worse than powerless, I felt humiliated. Because every time I saw Karen after that, she looked at me with that same smug smile, like she knew exactly what was happening and exactly how little I could do about it. It was a look that said, "I'm in charge here. You're just the newcomer. Don't forget it." She didn't even have to say the words out loud. The expression on her face said everything. It didn't stop there either. I started overhearing her at community gatherings, complaining about newcomers who don't understand the neighborhood rules. She never said my name, but the sideways glances made it clear who she was talking about. And the worst part? Some people nodded along, too nervous to challenge her authority. It twisted something inside me. Every time she spoke, every time she laughed, it was like she was rubbing salt in an open wound. I wanted to shout, to tell everyone the truth, but I had no proof. And without proof, I was just another frustrated neighbor with a story that sounded too petty to matter. The more it happened, the heavier it felt. I stopped ordering things I needed because I couldn't handle the anxiety of wondering whether they'd still be on the porch when I got home. I found myself checking the windows constantly, peeking outside like a prisoner in my own home. I had never felt this kind of helplessness before. It wasn't just about the packages, it was about control. About knowing that someone could cross a line, take what didn't belong to them, and face no consequences. That's the kind of pain that doesn't just sting once, it lingers. It eats at you slowly, making you doubt yourself, your neighbors, even your own sense of safety. And through it all, Karen kept walking her dog past my house, shoulders back, head high, as if she was the queen of the street. Every time I saw her, every time I heard her voice, that sense of powerlessness deepened. It's hard to describe what that does to you, unless you've lived it. You start to feel like maybe the neighborhood isn't what you thought it was. Maybe the dream you bought into was nothing more than a picture-perfect illusion. And maybe, just maybe, you start to wonder if you'll ever get that control back. At some point, I realized something important. Waiting for help wasn't going to change anything. The police weren't coming to save the day. The HOA wasn't going to hold Karen accountable. If I wanted justice, I had to create it myself. That thought was both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because I'd never been the type to pick fights or set up elaborate schemes. Liberating because for the first time, I wasn't just sitting around feeling helpless. I had a plan. But here's the thing about anger. If you act on it too quickly, you make mistakes. And Karen was the type of person who thrived on mistakes. If I yelled at her, if I lost my temper, she'd twist it into proof that I was the problem. So instead of letting the frustration control me, I decided to fight her in the one way she'd never expect, by using her own habits against her. Karen wanted to take packages off my porch? Fine, I would give her a package. One designed specifically for her. The idea came to me late one night as I was scrolling through videos on my phone, trying to distract myself. I stumbled across a clip of someone making a glitter bomb to deal with porch thieves. At first I laughed, but then I thought, wait a second, that could actually work. The next day, I ordered the supplies. A large cardboard box, plain and ordinary, like something any delivery service might drop off. Inside, I placed a container filled with the brightest, most permanent glitter I could find. Gold and pink, the kind that clings to everything and refuses to come off no matter how hard you try. But glitter alone wasn't enough. I wanted something that would make sure the moment the box was opened, there would be no escape. So I built a simple mechanism, motion-activated powder that would explode upward the instant the lid lifted. It took a few tries to get it right. My garage turned into a test zone, with tiny clouds of glitter coating the floor, my tools, even my shoes. But each failed test just made me more determined. By the time I was done, I had something that looked like any other package, but hidden inside was a trap waiting for the exact person who had caused me so much pain. Of course, a trap without evidence wouldn't mean much. I needed proof. So I set up a hidden camera across from my porch, carefully angled so it could capture the entire scene without being noticed. Every time I walked past it, I felt this nervous anticipation building in my chest. It wasn't just about catching Karen anymore. It was about reclaiming something I had lost. My sense of control, my peace of mind, my belief that this neighborhood could actually feel like home again. When the package was finally ready, I placed it on my porch. My hands shook slightly as I set it down. It looked so ordinary, just a brown box sitting in the sun, but I knew what was waiting inside. It was a strange mix of emotions. Part of me felt like a kid setting up a prank, but another part felt like a soldier preparing for battle. The waiting was the hardest part. Every sound outside made my heart jump. A passing car, a dog barking, footsteps on the sidewalk. Each time I wondered, is this it? Is this the moment? But underneath the nerves, there was something else growing inside me. Hope. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't just reacting. I wasn't just suffering through Karen's smugness or her endless rules. I was taking action. I kept picturing the scene in my head. Karen walking up with that same entitled expression, reaching down to grab the box like it was her right, carrying it away, completely unaware of what was inside. And then, the explosion of glitter, bright and unstoppable, covering her from head to toe. The image made me smile in a way I hadn't in a long time, and even more than the glitter, I imagined the camera capturing every second. No more whispers, no more hints or suspicions, just undeniable proof of what she was doing, wrapped up in a golden pink storm she'd never be able to explain away. That thought alone gave me strength. So I waited. Every minute felt like an hour. Every shadow stretched too long. But this time, I wasn't powerless. This time, I wasn't just watching things disappear. I was ready. And deep down, I knew, sooner or later, Karen wouldn't be able to resist. It didn't even take a full day. The package had been sitting on my porch for only a few hours when it happened. I heard the familiar click of footsteps on the sidewalk, sharp and deliberate, the way only one person in this neighborhood walked. I glanced through the blinds, heart racing, and there she was, Karen Thompson herself. She strutted toward the box with the confidence of someone performing a public service. Her chin was high, her shoulders squared, and her little dog trotted beside her as if it too were on official business. To anyone watching, she probably looked like a responsible neighbor swooping in to protect a parcel. But I knew the truth. And the hidden camera knew the truth. She paused for a second, scanned the street, then bent down and scooped up the box like it belonged to her. No hesitation, no shame. Just a quick glance around, then off she went, heading straight to her house. I remember holding my breath as I watched the feed from my phone. She disappeared through her front door, and for a few minutes there was silence. My pulse hammered in my ears, and then it happened. Karen lifted the lid. The trap triggered instantly, releasing a glorious explosion of golden and pink glitter that shot upward in a sparkling cloud. The camera caught every detail, the way her eyes widened in shock, the moment her hands flew up too late to stop it, the shimmer that clung to her hair, her sweater, her face. And then came the scream. It wasn't just a startled shout. It was the kind of shriek that echoed down the block, sharp and dramatic, like the whole world had turned against her in one glittery second. Her dog barked furiously in the background, shaking itself as the glitter rained down, coating its fur in tiny sparkling flecks. The best part? Glitter doesn't respect boundaries. It bounced off her clothes, drifted onto the carpet, scattered across the furniture. Every step she took just made it worse. The more she tried to brush it off, the more it spread. That house would be sparkling for months. I couldn't stop laughing, not a cruel laugh, but the kind of laugh that bursts out of you when the universe finally balances the scales. Weeks of frustration, powerlessness, and humiliation evaporated in an instant, replaced by sheer joy. And it didn't end there. The footage from my camera, crisp, undeniable, and just plain hilarious, made its way into the neighborhood chat. I didn't even have to share it myself. A neighbor who caught wind of the glittery chaos asked me about it, and once I showed them the clip, it spread like wildfire. Within hours, everyone had seen it. There was no spinning this. No excuse Karen could make that would erase what we had all witnessed. Her sneaking off with a package and getting showered in glitter like some kind of villain in a slapstick comedy. The fallout was swift. The HOA called an emergency meeting. For the first time, Karen didn't sit at the head of the table with her clipboard and her smug smile. Instead, she sat red-faced, still dusted with sparkles no matter how hard she tried to hide them, while the community discussed her actions. People who had been too nervous to speak before finally found their voices. One by one, neighbors shared stories of their own missing deliveries, their own frustrations, their own suspicions. The vote was unanimous. Karen was removed from her position as HOA president. For once, her authority meant nothing. And then, something I never expected happened. The HOA issued me a formal apology. They admitted they had ignored the signs for too long. They thanked me, actually thanked me, for exposing the truth in a way no one could deny. From that day on, my porch has been safe. My packages arrive and stay right where they belong. And the neighbors? They greet me with smiles, some of them still chuckling as they mention the glitter queen. It became a kind of running joke, a funny story people told newcomers as a warning. Don't mess with the porch packages here unless you want to sparkle forever. Looking back, I realized something important. Justice doesn't always come from shouting the loudest or fighting the hardest. Sometimes it comes from patience, creativity, and just the right touch of humor. Because nothing, absolutely nothing, is more satisfying than watching someone who has bullied and manipulated others finally get what they deserve. Not through anger, not through cruelty, but through a moment so spectacular, so unforgettable, that it leaves no doubt. They were caught, and everyone knows it. And as for me, well, every time I see a stray glitter speck glinting on the sidewalk near Karen's house, I smile. It's a tiny reminder that sometimes the simplest traps can create the biggest victories.